We are back with another Brett Favre, the new welfare king update. But this time it's not necessarily on Brett Favre. He is not the focal point of this particular video, but because of the person I'm going to be talking about today is tied to him, it's all connected. But in case y'all are unaware, this is Phil Bryant. Now, I've talked about him in the past couple of months when it concerned this situation because he is definitely more than connected to this whole Brett Favre situation. But some recent stuff just came out literally on the 14th, and only one outlet was talking about it, and it's called MississippiToday.org, where Phil Bryant asked the court to throw out a subpoena that was put against him about the pharma text between him and Brett Favre. I'm telling you, this man is about as sleazy and as snakish and conniving as his relative, Carolyn Bryant. In case y'all are unaware, he is related to Carolyn Bryant. And when you look at this picture right here, you can kind of see the resemblance. It's crazy. But I'm going to go ahead now and read the article. Former Governor Phil Bryant, whose administration saw the misspending of tens of millions of federal welfare funds, is again asking a judge to throw out a subpoena against him in the state's ongoing civil case related to the scandal. So this is his second time, or at least his second time, going before the judge to ask him to throw out this subpoena. So this is something that he's tried to have thrown out before. This is not his first time doing it, but this is my first time hearing about it. A defendant in the civil case filed a subpoena in early October for a large swath of records from Bryant, including his text with former NFL quarterback Brett Favre about a concussion drug company that received $2 million in stolen welfare funds. And y'all know I already talked about that. As a matter of fact, I think that was in the last two updates that I did concerning Brett Favre, was about that so-called concussion drug. You know, that cream that they were talking about that was tied to that company Prevacus. In a filing Friday, Bryant argued that his personal text messages are protected under executive privilege and that the subpoena should either be thrown out or that any records he provides be placed under a protective order. Sounds like he has something to hide. As a matter of fact, some things to hide. He made a nearly identical response in September to a separate subpoena for his communication related to the new volleyball stadium at his alma mater, University of Southern Mississippi, which was built using $5 million in welfare funds. The latest subpoena comes from Alston Smith, the nephew of convicted former welfare director John Davis. Smith is accused of taking nearly $430,000 in welfare funds under contracts he allegedly didn't fulfill. Sounds kind of familiar when it comes to Brett Favre. You know, all those so-called speaking engagements he gave that he didn't really give, but got paid for anyway as if he did something. He has argued in response to the complaint against him that if he's liable for welfare misspending, Bryant is too. Here comes the throwing up of under the bus. I'm loving it. And that the former governor should be added as a defendant. Bryant has rejected this notion. See, that statement right there shows you that they are now throwing each other under the bus. I'm loving it. Smith should not be allowed to use this proceeding as a political tool to harm the reputation and business of a former politician with whom he disagrees on matters of policy. Bryant's motion reads, a protective order would allow Smith to use the subject documents for legitimate purposes in the context of this suit and would disallow him from using them to grandstand in the press with baseless accusations and politically motivated innuendo. Hinds County Circuit Court Judge Faye Peterson has yet to rule on these and several other motions in the sprawling civil case, and defendants have asked for a hearing in January to resolve them. The Mississippi Department of Human Services civil case targets 38 individuals or companies, including Favre, for the concussion drug company Prevacus and Prevacus founder Jake Van Landingham. And I'm kind of laughing at that last name now because I came across a comment recently that one of my subscribers wrote concerning a video where I mentioned this Jake Van Landingham, and they said that Van Landingham last name just sounds so villainous, and it does. I always thought that anybody whose name had a Van in it or Yvonne in it, as far as their last name and it's leading into another name, always sounded kind of villainous. For example, Victor Von Doom, who we all know is Dr. Doom, the main and primary villain of the Fantastic Four. In an attempt to claw back roughly $24 million in misspent welfare funds, the purchases targeted in the suit make up a fraction of the nearly $100 million in improper spending that state auditor Shad White uncovered in 2020. Smith also subpoenaed Bryant for any of his communication related to several other welfare-related projects or alleged events first reported by Mississippi Today, including a fitness program by trainer Paul Lacoste, a virtual reality academy by Labaki Incorporated, advertising campaigns with conservative talk radio station Super Talk and Families First, treatment for Bryant's nephew, the governor, and his welfare officials facilitated in the firing of Debbie Hood, wife of former Democratic candidate for governor Jim Hood. See, when I read that stuff right there, one of the reasons why people like Phil Bryant doesn't want all of this, doesn't want the subpoena to happen, is because not only is it going to uncover the misspending he did when it comes to Brett Favre and that whole situation, but it's going to uncover most likely years of misspending of welfare funds on other things that we have no clue about except him and whoever was tied to it. So this is almost like opening Pandora's box. And the way it's framing itself right now, at least we can keep our fingers crossed that Pandora's box gets open and we find out what else he's been stealing money, welfare funds for in order to spend money on in unnecessary places or in places where he could have easily afforded to pay for it himself. Out of the 26 items requested in the subpoena, Bryant said he did not have responsive records for 11 of them. Bryant denied having any communication as the subpoena request between himself and the state auditor Shad White regarding whether you are liable for misappropriation by MDHS. He said he does not possess any communication with the former WWE wrestler Ted DiBiase or his two sons, who received over $5 million in welfare funds about payments to the wrestlers. Bryant also denied having any communication regarding Governor Tate Reeves' efforts to obtain funding for Paul Lacoste, whose foundation received $1.3 million in welfare funds, the tech company Labaki, which received $795,000 in welfare funds, and the termination of Debbie Hood as an employee of Family Resource Center. However, Bryant said he does not possess records and communication surrounding Prevacus, much of which Mississippi Today published in its series The Back Channel, including documents relating in any way to ownership interest in Prevacus that you, as in Bryant, have, or that was proposed or suggested to you by any person. He also confirmed he has communication about setting up a meeting with Paul Lacoste to talk about his foundation's contract, paying for advertising on conservative talk radio station Super Talk, which received $600,000 in welfare funds, securing treatment for his nephew Noah McRae, and advertising services for the welfare department of Families First for Mississippi. See, this is all new stuff that is coming out. Again, going back to what I was just said like about a couple minutes ago, where he does not want this stuff to come to light, but it's coming out regardless. And all of it started with a text message. How about that? But this sounds like it's been going on for many, many years, probably even before Brett Favre came into the picture. I wouldn't be surprised. But this is the same state that has a majority black city suffering from tainted water. Poison water. This is the same state that has some of the worst education rates in America and probably one of the poorest, if not the poorest state in America too. This is Mississippi. Many of these items are privileged and protected from discovery. Other responsive items are not privileged, but should be produced subject to the entry in a protective order that preserves the integrity of these proceedings, the motion reads. The rationale for executive privilege, the ability for the nation's top official to withhold information from the public, is that the communications is often so candid or personal in nature that public disclosure is likely in the future to stifle honest and frank communications, according to the 1980 Appeals Court opinion in Coastal States Gas Corp versus Department of Energy. Bryant's attorney, Billy Quinn, used the legal precedent in Watergate to make his argument. In that case, President Richard Nixon infamously refused to turn over 9 tape-recorded conversations in the White House, claiming executive privilege. In response, the court found that the president's communication was privileged, but with the caveat that it could be compelled by a sufficient showing of need. The court struck down Nixon's claim of privilege because the information sought was relevant and necessary on the ongoing Watergate investigations. Mississippi law does not contain executive privilege protections for the governor, nor has the Mississippi Supreme Court addressed this issue. Though courts in other states, Quinn pointed out, have adopted similar privileges for governors. Well, that's good to know Mississippi doesn't have this, so that means that they can pretty much go and get whatever it is Phil Bryant is hiding behind that subpoena. And I hope they get all of it, because like I said, I'm glad I'm sticking with this story, because, you know, with everything going on with Kyrie Irving and all of that stuff, this gets buried. And this needs to be put out there just as much, if not more, than what's going on with Kyrie Irving. This is major. This is huge. In all of this, you know, with Phil Bryant and Brett Favre and all of those, you know, Nancy New and all the people, they are all crooks. I keep saying that in every video when it comes to this. They are some thieves taking money from people who actually need it. And see, this story needs to stay out in the forefront, because they keep trying to say that black people are the welfare kings and queens and all types of stuff like that. No, people like Phil Bryant and Brett Favre and all those others who are working with this, and hell, them folks are some of the biggest welfare kings and queens, if you want to be completely honest with yourselves here, with ourselves. Who do you think started the program? As far as I'm concerned, the ones who started the program are the ones that's going to bite off of it the most. Let's just be completely honest with ourselves. But see, the fact that I have to constantly Google Brett Favre's name like every day just to see what kind of update comes is insane. I can go on Twitter and Kyrie Irving is trending for something or other every day. It's out there put in your face. I have to dig for this information just by typing in Brett Favre's name. And this, I kid you not, is the article I just read from is the only article at the time of me recording this video that has given this information that I just read to you. It is, and this isn't even a mainstream or a lamestream outlet. This is a local outlet called MississippiToday.org. This wasn't on Yahoo. This wasn't on MSNBC, CNN, if a damn sure wasn't on Fox News or any of those bigger outlets. It was just condensed to that, and it was posted 2 days ago. Interesting, right? But not surprising, nor is it shocking. Now, again, I'm gonna have to ask my subscribers who live down in Mississippi, were you aware of this article existing, let alone that this information was even out there? Again, this is 2 days old. By the time this video goes up, it'll be 3 days old, because I do plan on uploading it on the 17th of November. Again, this is a top priority story for me, not to do my best to keep this out there. Because, you know, if you don't stick on something like this when the updates come when they come, what's going to end up happening is the story will get buried and the issue will get buried. And then people don't want to talk about it anymore. And let's also keep in mind, before I close this video out, Phil Bryant and Brett Favre still have not been criminally charged for any actions they committed with this entire situation. Not one charge has come down on either one of them. They are still walking around unscathed as if they did nothing wrong. Remember, Brett Favre said a couple weeks back, and I did a video about it, where he felt he was the victim. He actually claimed that he was being victimized. Meanwhile, he was the one being, you know, a whole thief, a whole crook. But he had the nerve to say, oh, I'm the one that's being victimized because people called him out on it. Interesting state of affairs, I would say.